Okay, so we learned yesterday that there are three stages in our service of Hashem. The lowest stage is the stage called Havayat Tzvos, the intermediate stage, which is called Tzvos, and the highest stage, which is called Tzivos Hashem. Today we're going to go a little bit more into what those stages mean and how one would proceed from stage A to stage B to stage C. And we're going to first discuss the opposite order. We're going to discuss how things are in time of Moshe Rabbeinu, from the highest level, Tzivos Hashem, and then we're going to see how we can achieve the same from our own avodah, with own efforts in serving Hashem. The difference between Moshe Rabbeinu's Tzivos Hashem and the highest level of our service to Hashem, of Tzivos Hashem, is perhaps similar to what the Rebbe Rashab writes about in the beginning of Samach Vav, when he writes about the purpose of Tzimtzum. Rebbe Rashab asked the question, seemingly the purpose of Tzimtzum is to allow there to be space for the worlds to exist. If that's the purpose, what is the meaning of bringing the light back into the vacuum? The goal of Torah mitzvahs, it seems, is to bring the light back. If you bring the light back, then the world can't exist. So one of the things that Rebbe Rashab says is that the goal of creation is that Hashem, once the world exists already, it's possible, now that it exists, to be able to handle this revelation. Once it's there already, you can't, to begin with, if the revelation would be there at first, there'd be no room to create the worlds. Once the light is hidden and the worlds already exist, it's possible to bring the light back. Analogy he gives of a teacher and student, that by teaching the student step by step, the student's able to one day understand the level of the teacher, the same way the teacher could look at things, but the teacher has to bring things down to the level of the student in order to bring him back to the level of the teacher. In other words, the goal is the student should have the same perspective as the teacher. But if the teacher would try to do that by just telling him the way he looks at things, then the student wouldn't relate to it at all. I was thinking about this funny experiment they did to try to copy evolution. They took these chimpanzees and they wanted to see if they would be able to figure out how to use computers, evolution, man to monkey, monkey to man. And they put them in a room for X amount of time, and one monkey relieved himself on the computers and whatever. Of course, we don't believe in evolution. We believe in God, and God created the world in 6 days. But my point that the analogy is that you can't, even if it were possible to take a chimpanzee and make it into a human, it wouldn't be by offering it a computer. offer it first a banana. Then what about the computers in a couple of billion years? Then no one could disprove your theories. So the teacher has to talk to the student at his level, and then he can bring the student up to the higher levels. So in our service of Hashem, there is something that is similar to the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. But what's unique about our achieving this level is that it's not a gift that comes from Hashem. It's not because it's the time of this revelation. Like in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, that's when this revelation happened, and that's when the Jewish people appreciated this kind of perspective, this kind of revelation, because they were suited for it, they were vessels for it. The goal is that we who are not suited for it, are not vessels for it, should become vessels for it. And that's like the Tzimtzum, that there should be first a Tzimtzum, and then we should bring the light back into it. We should bring the light back in with our own efforts. I want to also point out before we go into this that everything in Chassidus has many different levels of application. Chassidus is compared to gold, and although gold isn't meant to be used as a broom, but you can use gold for a broom as well. Chassidim say that using gold as a broom is using Chassidus to get rid of despicable parts of our character. You could use other things without the gold to get rid of despicable things, but gold works too. And the Rebbe Rashab also said that you shouldn't think that Chassidus is meant to be studied for the sake of studying Chassidus. I know some people are sitting now on the Zoom like they're sitting here because they're supposed to study Chassidus before davening. No one's tzaref bring and so on, and mentioning one's name. But some people are sitting here because you're supposed to Chassidus before davening. It has nothing to do with me. It's all the Rebbe's things. I'm giving my contribution to the Lubavitch movement by learning the Rebbe's Basi Lagani this year. The Basi Lagani is something special to the Rebbe, and therefore I'm doing the Basi Lagani thing. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Rebbe Rashab said Chassidus is supposed to be studied for yourself. At the same time, there are lofty levels that we're going to be learning about today, and although there are loftier levels, we have to think about ways to apply them to ourselves. Okay, without no further ado, let's go right to it. Let's go to page Membez. Let's start with a line that starts with the word Dahavaya by the dot. Dahavaya tzvois ein bezeh. What are these various levels, and how are we meant to go about reaching these levels? What's going on? It says the face of Moses was like the face of the sun. However, it says regarding the face of Joshua, Moses' student, the successor, Yehoshua, it says his face was like the face of the moon. What's unique about the sun is that the sun doesn't change. That means the way a person approaches the service of Hashem is that that change is impossible. How is it possible there is no change? That is when the evil inside a person has been transformed to good. There is no opposition anymore. When you've eradicated all evil, so then you're serving Hashem without any change because there's nothing there to bring you down. Just keep on doing the right thing all the time because there is no evil there. There was a Polish Rebbe who told his son once, you should learn from the Yetzer Hara. He came on late to davening. I think his son came late to davening. So his father said to him, why'd you come late? He said, Yetzer Hara. So his father said to him, you should learn from the Yetzer Hara. He gets up early to bring you down. Look how he does his job. Isn't that amazing? Learn from the Yetzer Hara. So he said, Dad, the Yetzer Hara doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara gets the job done early in the morning, doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. Imagine not having a Yetzer Hara. Imagine not having a Yetzer Hara. There is a Maamar where the Rebbe speaks about something that we could relate to. Sometimes you're in a very holy mood, in a very uplifted, elevated mood, and all negative things, all physical things to you seem feh. There are moments like that, and we can relate to that. Sometimes you're that you look at some things that are very appealing. You think about like going to Dr. Bressman's office and looking at the scale, and then looking at the cream puffs. You hear is very kind, educated, soft-spoken. Can make your life better by but whatever. He doesn't even say it that way. That's like passive aggressive. He says it like in a real gentleman kind of European way. But then you look at the cream puff, you're like, oh, I don't want that cream puff. Feh. So I could do better than that. That's at least for 5 minutes. Sorry about Dr. Ressman. Anyways, so again, no oatmeal this morning. Anyway, so there is a possibility for a person to achieve a state of no change, and that is when evil is removed from his system. There was a chassid Rebbe Rashab, his name was Rebbe Yisrael Noach. What was his last name? Yisrael Noach, I can't remember his last name. Rebbe Rashab said about him, sometimes you're a Beinani. Now, a Beinani is someone who has evil in him, and he's challenged by the evil in him, and he always fights with it. But what's unique about a Beinani is there is no change in the sense that it always wins. He always wins. So it seems that you can't really be a sometimes Beinani, because either you are a Beinani or you're Solnech Volnitsky. Solnech Volnitsky. Rebbe Rashab said about him, sometimes you're a Beinani. Now, the Alter Rebbe says in chapter 14, a Beinani is someone who never sinned and never will sin. He never will. He has achieved the state of control in himself, though he has some negative things inside him, that he's always going to win. He's always going to show up. So how could he be sometimes a Beinani? So I think what that means, that although it's not the pristine scientific Hasidic laboratory, you wouldn't define him as a Beinani, but there are traces of Beinani in him. There's something of Beinani in him. In a similar way, there are traces of Yes, please, let's have in mind that Baruch Kohen Ben Chana Rivka was having surgery right now. Thank you, David. Someone could post it on the chat as well. If bring roll call, that'll be appreciated. So there is something of Beinani in us. In a similar way, I think Baruch also may want to get on the Zoom. If someone's helping get on the Zoom as well. I don't think they brought him in yet, so he's able to get on. Anyways, so there is something from Beinani in us. In a similar way, there's something of tzaddik in us. And there's something of that tzaddik element in us. And therefore, we are able to have something of this unchanging, there is no evil kind of thing. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu's generation experienced looking at the face of Moshe Rabbeinu, like the face of the sun, unchanging. There is no opposition. This is the meaning of Tzivas Havaya. We said yesterday that Tzivas Havaya means, Tzivas is a word that indicates diversity and multiplicity, referring to creation. And Tzivas Havaya means that all the multiplicity isn't seen, all diversity isn't seen. It's totally nullified and experiencing the truth of Hashem. There's no details, there's no myriads of creations. All that's experienced is the truth of Hashem. That's how things are in the world of Atzilus. Tzivas Havaya, all the multiplicity, all the different things are all one with the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. There is nothing outside of godliness. That's how things are in generation. Moshe Rabbeinu, the face of Moshe is like the face of the sun. All there is godliness on the personal level. That means there is no Yetzer Hara. In the language of the pasuk, Alakim asa adam yasher v'hem bikshul chashabenis rabin. God made a person to be straight, and they requested all kinds of calculations. That means the Yetzer Toiv, the godly soul, is straight. It's just pure. I want Hashem. I want to do the right thing. And it's the Hema, and it's the confused animal soul, which is made up of different components. As it says in Tanya, there's fire, there's water, there's wind and earth. That's why there's all kinds of calculations. So being a generation of Moshe Rabbeinu, the face of the sun means that there is no opposition, there is no Yetzer Hara. All there is the truth of Hashem, and that's experienced here in this world. In Tzivas Havaya, that in the place of diversion, the place of multiplicity, what is felt? Just the truth of Hashem. That's like serving Hashem from the perspective of the world of Atzilus, looking at everything from an Atzilus perspective. The name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is associated with the world of Atzilus. So too, the essence of Moshe Rabbeinu, who in his days, the Jewish people are called Tzivas Havaya, the essence of Moshe Rabbeinu is the world of Atzilus, even in this world. It's interesting that the Rebbe says, in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, all the Jewish people are called Tzivas Havaya. What happens with Moshe Rabbeinu is something which makes a generation to be in that state. Parenthetically, and not so parenthetically, on Yud Shvat, the Rebbe would often give a status report, so to speak, of where we're up to. Rabbi Shimon Zarcha Ein Gesund, he was around Ein Gesund for many, many Yud Shvats. He said that the Rebbe would give a sort of status report on Yud Shvat. Sometimes the Rebbe would say we're now 3 years old, 3 years after Yud Shvat. 10 years after the previous Rebbe's passing, the Rebbe said now we're 10 years old. 13 years after Yud Shvat, the Rebbe said now we're 13. The 14th year after Yud Shvat, the Rebbe said now there is a new stage, and the Rebbe spoke about other stages after Yud Shvat. And so the ois, the paragraph of the previous Rebbe's Maamar that we're studying this year is the message for the year. In Tafshin Yodalit, 14 years after Yud Shvat, I think they mentioned the Yod HaChazaka, the year of the powerful arm. So the Rebbe made a fabring in every single Shabbos. It was unusual at the time. Powerful arm, more power, and there was a fabring in every single Shabbos. Okay, so Moshe Rabbeinu is in a certain state that the Gemara says, Gufa Basar Reisha Azil, the body follows the head. If Moshe Rabbeinu is in the world of Atzilus, his generation is also Atzilus-like. Sounds like Dr. Bressman's, I just want to say something. Want to say something? Okay, I'll put you on mute for a second. Okay, so, even though Moshe Rabbeinu was in this world, he was in the world of Atzilus. Even while he was in this world, He was talking to the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. He still was Atzilus in this world, talking to the Pharaoh. That's why, unlike other people in the Torah whose names are repeated twice, there is a psik. When God repeats the name of Avram or other tzaddikim in the Torah twice in the Torah, there's a separation between the first time his name is mentioned and the second time. The way the Torah is read, there is a change in the tune. The reason for this, a change in the tune, is because there's a change in tune, a change in frequency between the way the soul of Avram is in the higher world and the way Avram is in this world. Regarding Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe, there's the same tune for the first time his name is mentioned, and the next time in the same sentence his name is mentioned, it's the same tune. Why is it the same tune? Because Moshe Rabbeinu in this world is the world of Atzilus. He is looking at the Pharaoh as he sees Atzilus. When I was in Yeshiva, Ramil Tzival Shalom once gave me the unwanted job of describing the 10 spheres of Atzilus. So one of the boys in Yeshiva, Yeshiva, everyone's great at giving people, giving you bittul. So one says that tonight, Moshe Levin's going to share with us about the 10 spheres of Atzilus. Someone wrote underneath, eyewitness report. I'm a space cadet. Eyewitness report. 10 spheres of Atzilus. Anyway, so Moshe Rabbeinu is looking at Atzilus. He's talking to the Pharaoh, but he's in Atzilus. Okay. That's who Moshe Rabbeinu is. That's the love of Moshe Rabbeinu. Let's go next page. So if there is the way the Jewish people were in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, that they were in the state of Atzilus. That although they're in a place of diversity, what diversity? All there is Atzilus. In the Vayetzvoish, so if an Aveda, then there is, as well in yesterday, that a person is in this world and he is experiencing this world the way this world looks like to our eyes, and yet Hashem, there's something of Atzilus shines a little bit into this world. There's some ray of Atzilus that shines in this world. Havayetzvoish, something of Yuvke Vavke, something in the truth of Hashem, the world of Atzilus, trickles into the tzvos, trickles into the battles, although he's fighting with the Yetzer Hara, and he's hard-knuckling it. Yet the Eivishter sends him some kind of assistance that's otherworldly. Havai tzvos. You know what I'm talking about? Havai tzvos. You feel God's assisting you. Not just you're a Jew and you trust in Hashem, you know Hashem's assisting you, but you feel Hashem's assisting you. That's Havai tzvos. There is an opposition, and you have to fight with opposition, and you have to overcome it. And then there's something in between these two levels. There's the world of Atzilus, it's one level, and there is this world, another level, where it has some light of Atzilus trickling in. Then there's something in between. That's a generation of Joshua, generation of Yeshua. What's the level in between? The prophets sought to make our perspective to be somewhat like the world of Atzilus. When people use the world in our generation, perhaps in previous generations it was different, but in our generation, Hasidim, when they use the word Atzilus to someone, they mean the word space cadet. They mean the world's guy's out, he's somewhere else. So the prophets sought to make this world to have the same experience as Atzilus. Not to actually be Atzilus like Moshe Rabbeinu, but this world Atzilus should be channeled to this world. It's hard to describe exactly what this means for me, because we're talking all about this world. We're not talking about different places. We're talking about, let's look at the same scene. Moshe Rabbeinu is in front of the Pharaoh, and he is in the world of Atzilus. He's in the front of the Pharaoh, and yet he has the glasses of the world of Atzilus. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. What were the prophets who used the name Tzivos Havaya? They used the name Havaya Tzivos. What was their objective? Their objective was to bring Yudke Vavke, to bring the truth of Hashem into a lower perspective. Perhaps that means that there is your first reality, which is there is the Pharaoh there is the sorcerers there is this great opposition to holiness here, and yet I need to feel over here that there's something that this is also Eino Movade. Nothing besides Hashem here too. My first reality is, though, that's the guy in the throne. He's the guy who has the key to let us out of Egypt. That's a different perspective than Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu's first reality is, who is that guy? Oh, he's the guy that God said to talk to. for Moshe Rabbeinu, talking to the Pharaoh, talking to anybody, God said to talk to him. I'll talk to him. The prophets brought the truth of Yud Kei Vav Kei, the truth of Atzilus, to the worlds beneath Atzilus. Where their first reality is diversity. The first reality is the multiplicity. The first reality is the klippa, is the covering, is the shell, which is very real. And yet, in the place of the shell, in the place of the concealment, there should be the truth of Hashem. Look at the parentheses. The Rebbe Rashab talks about two kinds of service of Hashem. One is Yechuda Tata, one is Yechuda Ilah. If I were to oversimplify and hopefully not misconstrue the two modes of service of Hashem, Yechuda Tata, Yechuda Ilah. I once asked one of my uncles, what's Yechuda Tata, Yechuda Ilah? I just heard those words. I was excited. I was like 12 years old. What's Yechuda Tata, Yechuda Ilah? So my uncle said, it's asking the right in the beginning of Shayich of Amunah, Alter says, Shema Yisrael, Yechuda Ilah, Baruch Shem Yechuda Tata. That doesn't really answer the question. Yechuda Ilah, Yechuda Tata are associated with those verses, but it doesn't explain what they are. Yechuda Tata means that the first reality is the world, and the world, recognizing that the world has a godly energy that animates it. So it's kind of like in the Shema where we say that there are 7 heavens, there are 4 directions, and really, what is the 4 heavens? What are the 4 directions? There's godly energy that animates it. A higher perspective is that all there is Hashem. That there's not, I'm not looking at the creation. I'm trying to visualize the way things are from a higher perspective above creation. That all there is Him. So, for our natural animal soul, the first kind of resonates, depending how refined we are. The second may sound more ridiculous because that's what are you talking about? All there is Him. Where are you trying to do something which is trying to imagine something which you don't, which is like a fantasy to you? And that Rashab sort of I don't know what the right word is, but he says that for most people it is sort of like a fantasy. It is something which isn't real. However, he says, in order to be able to maintain the first kind of mode of service of Hashem, we're recognizing that everything in the world has a godly energy, and the truth of everything is Hashem. To have that kind of perspective, you have to travel to the Yechuda Ilah perspective also. In other words, in order to get to Yechuda Tata, in order to be able to have something of that lower level, you have to travel sometimes to the higher level. So that's why in davening, in our prayers, we say Shema Yisrael. We talk about the higher level. We talk about nothing besides Hashem at all. Why are we talking about that? Because in order to, although it's not something that we can maintain internally and live with, but in order to, so a friend of mine put it this way, I hope it's not sacrilegious to say this, he said, in order to make things awesome, you got to be ridiculous for a while. In order to be able to maintain, what's this table? You're looking at a table. You're looking at a table, and all day the table looks like table. And you want to say table isn't table. Table is the word of Hashem which says this be a table. It's not really a table. That's also something which is not your natural center of gravity. It's also something which is not tangible. In order for you to be able to maintain this perspective of getting a different perspective on the table, you have to be able to let go and go to accept it as a truth which your mind cannot grasp. I think of the Meil Tzibol Hashem used to say that although the Kav, we learned about the Kav earlier in the Maamar, the light of Hashem that emerges after the Tzimtzum, which is contracted light, limited light of Hashem, although the Kav emerges post-Tzimtzum, Ramel quoted the Rebbe Rashab often, who said, the Kav, it was a Simchas Torah Maamar. The Rebbe Rashab would often, said he would always prepare for a Maamar. This Maamar, I think, was said without preparation, so there's an interesting kind of free-flowing language in this Maamar, which is in another Maamar. Rebbe Rashab said, although the Kav, the light of Hashem that emerges after the Tzimtzum, is affected by the tzimtzum, it remembers how it was before the tzimtzum. It remembers that pre-tzimtzum state. It remembers how it was before the tzimtzum. In a similar way, people, who have good memories, remember when you're a child, you're a little more refined, more idealistic than when you're, as Jonathan said before, when you're talking about the weather. So even though you may be in the maybe in the different center of gravity right now, at least you remember your able cut. You remember when you want to daven to the Eibishter. Even though you're not ready to daven, you're not in the mood of daven, you're not in the sense of reverence and intimacy with Hashem right now. If you think about how a person looks like when they're davening, how you look like when you're in a davening state, you can get there. You remember how davening looks, how davening feels. That could help you get to the davening mode. In a similar way, there is Yichudei Dayulah, and that Yichudei Dayulah, that it reminds me also of chapter 14 in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe speaks about how there's an oath we made to Hashem to be a tzaddik. And the Alter Rebbe says that although a Beinoni cannot reach the level of a tzaddik, that's a gift from God to totally eradicate the evil from within you. However, he says in chapter 14 that everyone has to do what they can to fulfill this oath, and they have to therefore meditate also how all physical pleasures are temporary. And he said that everyone's able to achieve that. Everyone's able to get a perspective on the fleeting value of physical pleasures. Although you're not really going to eradicate your attraction to physical pleasures, but that does help you realizing that it's not worth it, and you're able to cultivate that perspective, getting a different angle on that thing which you're so attracted to. That makes you it's easier. That helps the iskafia. It gives different your iskafia, your ability to subdue the Yetzer Hara is done differently. Because you have a different perspective, you know that it doesn't really have value. Does that mean you don't have the same physical body as you had before? Does that mean that your palate has changed? Well, think of a drug addict. A drug addict who decides that this is bad for him, he hates this, how it's ruining his life. So he may still enjoy the drugs if you would have it, but while he's having the drugs, and before, he feels this, I don't want to do this. This is ruining my life. There's some other anxiety and allergic reaction he has to the drugs as well. So in a similar way for the Beinoni, for the guy who has not yet eradicated, he's not reached the level of Moshe Rabbeinu, where there is no evil at all in his midst, he has a Yetzer Hara, it's possible to approach this biyah, this natural human reality with the perspective of, we're going to win this one day. Mashiach is going to come. It's not always going to be part of my character. I know that I'm going to become a tzaddik. That's the truth. Yeah. Rabbi Zakalman used to say, Chassid Alter Rebbe used to say, he was one of the top Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. There was even a discussion about him succeeding the Alter Rebbe. Anyways, Rabbi Zakalman used to say that when Mashiach will come, they're going to take Eisel, that was his nickname, they're going to put him on their palm of their hands, and they're going to say, look at this little creature. He used to pray. He used to daven. And Mashiach will come, we're going to be a whole way above whatever level we're on now. Way above. We're all going to be at that level. We're all going to be Kedoshim. Mashiach will come. So there's a way to approach your challenges today and say that you're a soul from Atzilus. You are. Every neshama comes from Atzilus. I think of it as like the game of Monopoly. I think it's a boring game. But people enjoy this game. How do they enjoy the game? They say to themselves before the game, I'm going to enjoy this game. This is going to be my geschmack. I love this. And because they do that, they just sit down with that game for days. Machaya, what do we do? We're playing Monopoly. In a similar way, it's possible to have, although we're not in the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu, it's possible to have something of that reality in us, and something of that truth, of that conviction of, I'm going to become a tzaddik. Let me just read the last two lines and hear Rabbi Zev's question. Okay, so I ended the parentheses. The highest level is to reach the level of tzivus Hashem. That's to serve Hashem in the way of Atzilus. But the way to reach Atzilus is to fight first the Yetzer Hara, to be in the lower level of reality where there is an opposition, where there's a fight, and you have Hashem sends assistance to you, to everyone, no matter what's going on. Hashem sends assistance to us. We fight and we win. So that's the first level. That's the level where you're subduing the Yetzer Hara. Then there's a level in between. There's a level in between where there is something about Tzilus that is channeled to the level of Biyah more than just a ray, but there's something about Tzilus experienced in Biyah. The Skafia, which has some ishapcha element, the subduing of evil, which you have some of this conviction of victory in that experience. And then there's a highest level where in this world, not like Moshe Rabbeinu experienced it naturally, but through our efforts, through Aveda, Hashem will give us in this world, in this realm, in the realm of Biyah, in the realm of Bria Yitzir Asiyah, in the realm of the physical, Hashem will reveal here the perspective of Atzilus as Atzilus is in its pristine state, as Moshe Rabbeinu sees it. We will see from our perspective the truth of Hashem from the world of Atzilus. That's the highest level. Those are the 3 stages. Eskafia, then there is Eskafia, which brings to us Hapcha, Eskafia with this Hapcha perspective, and there's a total Hapcha where Atzilus is here. Any questions or comments? Yonatan is like, that dude, you're out to lunch, man. All right, what else?
Yeah, I'm going to second Yonatan on that one. It seems very fantasy. I mean, we learn this in all the different Maamarim, and who are we kidding? Even, as we just recently learned in Tanya, you're just faking it. You're imagining in your head this certain perspective, but in all reality, you're nowhere near it. So it gets you to do one more mitzvah. It gets you to give a little bit more tzedakah. That's what it's all about.
It's not a gimmick. For sure, not a gimmick. In fact, if anything, it's opposite. Our Yetzer Hara does a gimmick to us. In davening, we say every day, Hashem, please help us not get embarrassed, not be ashamed. What are we asking? No tachum today, Zev. It's Rosh Chodesh. No, we ask Hashem not to be ashamed, not to be embarrassed. What are we talking about? That means Mashiach will come, and we're going to see how the ridiculousness was.
We get that when Mashiach comes.
Second, so therefore, the Rebbe is telling us that you have to be realistic. Be realistic. Realistic thing is not that the sun's going to rise tomorrow. You walk your dog again tomorrow. Realistic is that you are going to sing in the Beis HaMikdash. That's being realistic. That's being realistic. So and all of our thoughts that we're going to go after Yetzer Hara and all kinds of things, that's an einrednish. That's the Rebbe says that's imaginary. So Dvar Avayakum Leilam, the Rebbe is telling us to be realistic. The opposite. We have a choice, either being realistic or being being yesterday backwards.
I can give you a real life perspective that I think we all can relate to.
Please.
Okay. All right. So if you go into a good grocery store, your eyes are naturally first attracted to the vegetables because they're bright, green, and fresh. And your brain knows this is really what you need. But then you walk over to the candy, power bar section, and you sit there and make little calculations. Oh, okay, I can get this from that one, and this from that one, and this from that one. But your brain is programmed to recognize, honestly, this is really true. Your brain is programmed to recognize those foods, those pigments, the phytophenols there. What is really healthy for you? It was Hippocrates who said, let medicine be your food and food be your medicine. Once you've learned that, the rest is easy. You can give up the cream puffs of this world.
Okay. Zev, I think I have my job cut out for me to be able to share this with you tomorrow. It's Hashem. Okay, no, if I get rid of the cream puffs.
Yeah, my one comment was going to be my one comment was going to be like similar to learning Gemara.
Huh?
Learning Gemara is like playing Monopoly for me.
But you can decide it's geschmack. I when I learn Gemara,
you decide before it's going to be your schmuck.
Doesn't matter what discussion is. Doesn't matter what discussion is. It really doesn't matter. In Gemara, it's the God. It's the Eibishter. It's great. It works. Anyways, have a great day, Dr. Bressman. Good Chodesh, Dr. Bressman. Good Chodesh, Nachum Mendel. Good Chodesh, David. Good Chodesh, Yonatan. Good Chodesh, Zev. Good Chodesh, Jeff. Good Chodesh, Nachum Mordechai. Good Chodesh, Beryl.